Some years ago, Cormac McCarthy donated a great deal of papers to, I believe, Texas State University. Now, among these papers were various notes as well as early drafts of many of his novels. However, also among these papers, there was a previously unseen work of his, a work which had not been published or really surfaced anywhere prior to this donation. It was a complete, although abandoned, screenplay entitled Whales and Men. Now, somebody at Texas State University was actually good enough to scan this script and upload it to the internet where I was able to read it. And yes, I did print it out, and yes, I bound it like an actual screenplay because I needed something to display in this video as well as to gesticulate with. So here is the script, Whales and Men by Cormac McCarthy. This was written, I believe, in the 1980s, and it was abandoned. And it's not really any wonder why after reading this, because this would have been a box office disaster if this had actually been turned into a movie. In fact, I'm guessing that he may have pitched this to some studios, and they were like, "Nah, we don't, we don't want to deal with this." Needless to say, this would not have made much money, if any. It would have been a bomb. But that is not to say that it is of a low quality, rather that it was written in the wrong format, I should say. Now, Cormac McCarthy is no stranger to screenwriting. No Country for Old Men actually began as a screenplay, and he turned that into a novel. That did not appear to be the case with this. This just kind of languished. He didn't convert it into anything else. And he also wrote the original screenplay, The Counselor, which was directed by Ridley Scott and starred Michael Fassbender and Penelope Cruz and Brad Pitt and Cameron Diaz and Javier Bardem. And that movie, I do not count among his greatest work. It's pretty clear watching that movie that he doesn't really know what he's doing when it comes to screenwriting, because and it's also very clear by reading this. He doesn't know how to write scripts. He just knows how to write novels, because that's basically what this is, and that's basically what The Counselor was. It's just a typical Cormac McCarthy novel, just written differently. And you can't really do that when you're trying to write something for film, because film and literature obey vastly different rules. The Counselor I found very hard to follow. There were so many scenes in that movie that didn't add up to anything or contribute to the plot. It was kind of scattershot, it seemed to me. I do respect it because it did have a lot of stuff going on under the surface, as you would expect from a Cormac McCarthy work, but still, it just didn't pack that much of a punch for me. It's just kind of there for me. But this is different. This packs a punch. It packs a very hefty punch. Although, as a screenplay, it is still direly flawed. This work is 133 pages long. Now, if you don't know, in screenwriting, one page of script is usually roughly equivalent to about 1 minute of screen time. So a 90-page script is, your typical hour and a half long movie. This script being 133 pages would clock in roughly somewhere around 2 hours and 13 minutes, give or take. So it's a bit on the longer side. However, that is not why this would have bombed if it was turned into a movie. But the reason why this would have been a terrible movie is because this has no plot at all. And you can do that with books, because people buy books for vastly different reasons than they go to see a film. But you can't really do that so much when you're writing a movie. This is the most plotless idea for a movie I have ever encountered. However, it is still deeply affecting and incredibly thought-provoking and very moving. And shockingly, the characters in this script are actually better than a great deal of the characters that he's written in his novels. So, what is Whales and Men actually about? Well, like I said, it has no real plot. There is this guy named John Western, and you can see some kind of shades of The Passenger in that name. You can see he was toying with having a character with the last name Western for a very long time, apparently, because, in the passenger, Bobby and Alicia Western. Well, there's a character, I guess the main character, if you want to, this doesn't really even have a main character, but there's a guy named John Western, and he owns a boat, and he apparently has some serious funds that he can rely on. He doesn't really have a job. And he has a girlfriend named Kelly, and then he also has a friend named Guy Schuler, who is a marine biologist who studies cetaceans, whales. And then there's also this guy named Peter Kilgore, who is an Irish lord. And they're all, they're all buddies, and they sail around on John's boat studying whales and chasing whales. And that's pretty much it. This thing, like I said, is 133 pages long. And it wasn't until about page 90 that anything even approaching a plot actually happened. And plus, look at this dialogue in here. I mean, the dialogue in this look at this. That's dialogue. That right there is dialogue. It's ridiculous to try to, think that any studio would want something like this that has no plot, is just copious amounts of discussion and conversation that has no forward momentum or anything like that. It's no wonder this never got picked up to be a film. But this work is still a quality work of Cormac McCarthy's. In fact, I did my Cormac McCarthy ranking video earlier this year, and, reading this, I was kind of wondering where this was going to fall. I think you can go back and watch that video if you want. I put Stella Maris at number 6, I believe, and I put The Road at number 5. This would fall right around in there somewhere, maybe just under Stella Maris. I would rank this like halfway up his bibliography if we're counting this as like a book. It is a very solid work, but there were some things I didn't like about it. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to analyze and critique the lost work of Cormac McCarthy, the screenplay Whales and Men. This book is, like I said, plotless. This screenplay, sorry, is, like I said, it's entirely plotless. It's just some people sailing around on a boat looking for whales and talking about whales, and also using whales as a launch pad for very, very, very deep philosophical discussions. Whales and Men ties in greatly with many of the themes that Cormac McCarthy has played around with throughout his entire career as a writer, such as language, which factors in majorly in The Passenger, as well as consciousness and the necessity of witness for anything to really be. And it's also typically for Cormac McCarthy, it's deeply pessimistic. This is a heartbreaker of a script, especially there towards the end. It really goes for the heart towards the end. This is a very affecting work, but it just wouldn't have worked very well on screen because it doesn't really have any kind of drive to it. But anyway, so the characters in this screenplay discuss whales. They also discuss the nature of the universe and the nature of humanity and the human capacity for evil. And McCarthy actually has a character in here put forward the theory that language is actually the root of true evil, because language separates us from reality. Language is a way of referring to reality, but it is not reality itself. And he contrasts this with the way that whales communicate with, like sounds and stuff that communicate not really the same way that humans do. And it's very thought-provoking. It definitely is, because, as the saying goes, the map is not the territory. Talking about an object is not actually the object. It's only a representation of reality in our minds. So there's the character in here, Peter, postulates that humans are capable of evil because they are removed from reality more so than the other animals who don't have the language that we have, or at least the type of language that we have. Interesting stuff. And then also it segues into conversations about non-being and nothingness. And one character says, if the whales all go extinct, how vast must be the nothingness which can contain them? Kind of trippy, but definitely worth pondering. But there's more talk about how he says in here that non-being requires a witness just as being does. And again, that ties into a theme that he's played with in the past, as in Blood Meridian, as well as in The Passenger, definitely. So, and then of course, human evil is kind of his bread and butter when it comes to Cormac McCarthy. But this work is definitely tied in with the themes that are just so intrinsic to Cormac McCarthy. And the writing in this is so intrinsically his as well, even though this is a script. It's the way that he describes the scenes in between the dialogue, which, most screenwriters would probably just say, exit John, enter Guy, exit Kelly, like stage directions. You don't, in a script, you don't have to write that much for the description of the actions, just enough to convey it. But no, it still reads like Cormac McCarthy. It reads like something out of his books. But there are a lot of mistakes in this. This was obviously not a polished product. There are loads of typos in this as well. He has the wrong characters saying dialogue. Like he'll have one character say something and then have the same character respond. I mean, he just swapped out the names incorrectly. So there are mistakes in this. It definitely was not polished. Um, and also, one thing that I didn't like about it, in fact, the only thing about this that I did not like was the ending. The ending was surprisingly kind of schmaltzy, I felt. It was so bleak and so pessimistic there. Once you hit about page 60, which is up until then, it's just aimless. It starts to get a sense of direction around page 60, and then around page 90, it gets you see what the plot actually is. But again, if you're watching this as a film, that would be too little, too late. But it does eventually gain some kind of sense of direction, and it is heartbreaking. Seriously, I'm not going to spoil it, but if you are passionate about animals, in particular aquatic animals, whales, there are some things that happen in this that are probably going to hit you pretty hard. It hit me pretty hard, and I'm not even a huge fan of whales. I mean, I like whales, but I'm not, you know, I'm not an acolyte of whales like the character of Guy in this is. But still, it hits hard. It goes right for the heart. It is a very impactful work. But the ending, I was not a fan of. The ending was surprisingly schmaltzy, I found, and maudlin, kind of saccharine. I did not like the ending, so that dropped it down significantly in my estimation. Uh, but this work was still very much worth reading. I'm so glad that I found this and that I was able to read it. And I'm going to, if possible, include the link in the description box where I read this. So if you would like to read this unpublished, lost work of Cormac McCarthy's, you can do so as well. So I'll try to put that in the description box if it'll let me. And yeah, Whales and Men by Cormac McCarthy. I'm going to give this, I don't even know if I can rate this. It's flawed deeply as a script. This should never have been written as a script. It should have been a book. So as a movie screenplay, this fails miserably because nobody would pay to see this. It's like that film. It's like that movie Birdman with Michael Keaton, where the Birdman character says, "People don't want this boring philosophical bullshit. They want actions and explosions." That does ring pretty true. This would have been such a bomb if this was actually produced. So yeah, it's a failure as a script, but as a work of literature, which I mean, this is still technically literature. It's a written work. So, as a work of literature, I would probably give this like a B minus. The ending was the only thing that I didn't like, the only real complaint I had with it, aside from just the errors and mistakes that should have been ironed out. But yeah, this was definitely an intriguing read. I'm very glad that I read it. And like I said, I'll try to put the link to where I did read it in the description box so you can read it too. And yeah, Whales and Men by Cormac McCarthy. Have you read Whales and Men? If you have, let me know down in the comments what you thought about it, whether you have agreed or disagreed with anything that I've said about it here today. And if you have not read Whales and Men, give it a read if you are a fan of Cormac McCarthy. I would not at all count this as his best work, but it is worth a read, and it is actually a quality work, just not in the format which it was actually written. And as always, if you have enjoyed anything you've seen or heard here today, remember to hit that like button and subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. And until next time, peace.